Hello and welcome to another video from me, the History Tutor, and in this video we're looking at the Nazis and their early history in the years 1918 to 1928. So in this video we're going to be looking at the early years of the Nazis. As I said, we'll look at Hitler's early years, what the Nazis stood for in the early years, the Beer Hall Putsch, the restructured Nazis as well, and then how successful were they by 1928 in their new tactics. So look at this video a few times, see if you can revise your knowledge, and then do have a look at my tutoring videos. I can talk you through how to answer questions successfully, and also do look at my revision guides. But now let's go over to the key content. So the story begins in 1919 when Hitler joined the German Workers' Party in Munich. It was led by Anton Drexler, who was a bit more of a socialist than a nationalist and was not as popular in terms of personality and vision and ideas as Hitler became when he joined the party. By 1920, Hitler was the leader, and he had a more nationalist idea about how things should be run, and so the Nazis were born, and they were the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party, and they moved into a field of a bit more of a nationalist idea, but still trying to appeal to workers, which is why maybe the word socialist still remains in their name. By 1921, Hitler's made some changes. He's brought in the SA, and they are the brown-shirted protection squad. They used violence to crush opposition, and of course they're a big part of the 1923 attempted uprising of the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. But they were more than that. They were a daily protection squad. So in the city of Munich there were rival nationalist groups, but in particular there were the communists. This SA would spend their time fighting in the streets or attacking communist meetings, showing the middle class and showing the supporters of nationalism that Nazis were strong in dealing with communism. Hitler's Nazi party also adopted the swastika flag at this stage, and this gave them a great symbolism that stood out above other parties. The Nazis also developed their first manifesto, the 25-point programme, and this gives us an idea of their early beliefs and what they stood for. So clearly they keep some of the socialist ideas, but they become a bit more nationalist as well in their ideas. So clearly destroying the Treaty of Versailles was a big nationalist part of their identity. They wanted to reclaim land and unite all German people, develop the Anschluss as well. They started to show their racist side as well, with anti-Semitic laws and prejudicial laws towards German people. They wanted a Germanic education to show love of Germany. They wanted to expand Germany and have living space, so not just crush the Treaty of Versailles, but have Lebensraum, living space for the German people. And also they wanted to celebrate the heroes of Germany by giving generous old age pensions as well. So all of this shows a very nationalist identity and starts to shape the policies of the future. So now over to one of the big events of this era for the early Nazis, the Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, the attempt of the Nazis to seize power at this stage. Now this was caused by the events of 1923, the Ruhr crisis and hyperinflation. And you can find out more about that in my video on early Weimar 1918 to 1924. So Stresemann becomes Chancellor in the year 1923, and he wants to solve all the problems that Germany is facing. So he starts to pay back reparations to France and calls off the passive resistance in the Ruhr. So this is obviously very unpopular with nationalists. They loved the policy of standing up to the French and destroying the Treaty of Versailles and rejecting its consequences. So the Nazis and other parties were very much against Stresemann, and they were looking for rebellion. Hitler decided to lead a revolt for himself, and he believed he could be successful by gaining the support of the nationalist Munich Bavarian government. He had the support of General Ludendorff, the German army hero from World War I, and he thought he could take over the agenda of nationalism in Bavaria and Munich and have a march on Berlin to seize power. So what happened in the events of the Beer Hall Putsch? The evening of the 8th of November, first of all, Hitler stormed the Burger Braukeller, which was a massive beer hall in Munich. His SA took control of the building, and in this building there was a meeting of all sorts of nationalist groups led by the Bavarian Prime Minister, a man called Kahr, and they were trying to plan a rebellion or plan some kind of uprising against the national government in Berlin because they were unhappy with the current situation of paying back reparations and ending the passive resistance. So once Hitler had taken control of the hall, he called all the leaders into a side room, and eventually Ludendorff arrived, and they all agreed to join Hitler's rising and they rise together against the government. Hitler went into the hall and he announced the national revolution has begun. Overnight, this rebellion takes place. So as we go into the early hours of the 9th of November, this is what happened. 3,000 Nazis marched in the centre of Munich to take control of Munich. Other Nazis went to the military barracks to gain control and gain army support. But whilst this was happening, Kahr, the Bavarian leader, called the local army and police and called them to stop the rebellion. He had betrayed Hitler. So the Nazis met resistance and were shot at as they marched to the army barracks, and whilst they were marching through the centre of Munich, and Hitler was shot, the Nazis eventually fled and the uprising had failed. So of course Hitler and his co-conspirators were arrested eventually, and they went on trial in 1924. Now, this was an important moment for Hitler because this trial was a media sensation. It was picked up by newsreels and newspapers all across the country. To go into the courtroom, it was a sellout. You couldn't get tickets without being on a waiting list or being in the media. And Hitler gained some fame. So in the trial itself, it turns out the judge was very supportive and very nationalist. He let Hitler speak very freely and give long nationalist speeches, which were recounted by the media. And of course, because he was a pro-Nazi judge, Hitler got quite a light sentence as well. So Hitler, when he was in prison, he was sent to prison for 12 months and only served 9 months in Landsberg prison. Whilst he was in prison, he wrote his book Mein Kampf, My Struggle, which set out his ideas and beliefs and his policies, and he was aiming to capitalise a little bit on his fame to spread his message. And he decided on a new plan to seize power, which was to use democratic tactics rather than violence. So when he came out of prison, Hitler began to reorganise the party. Nazi members had training in how to give public speaking, how to run an event, how to organise propaganda, how to make a leaflet, so that they could distribute their message more easily around Germany. They led big propaganda campaigns like the Blood and Soil campaign, focused on the poor farmers whose blood was in the soil and who were not being paid very well at this time in the 1920s due to worldwide agricultural depression. And they used really great posters like this one. This one is about Hitler not being able to speak. He was banned from doing public speaking after his arrest and being in prison. He also organised that the SA grew and so showed the militarism and organisation of the Nazis. They would do marches and have organised events to really highlight this militarism, which would have appealed to many nationalist people, maybe older generations of people as well. As I said, many people like this, the popular aspect in Germany. But by the 1928 election, it had been a bit of a failure for the Nazis. They only gained 2.6% of the vote, 12 seats, which was less than they'd gained in 1924 when they were a banned party that wasn't allowed to stand in the election. So all this hard work had gained very, very little. And this was because the Weimar Republic was doing so well. There was a boom years going on at this stage and everyone was pretty happy. However, if you look in detail at results, you'll find that lots of people who voted for Hitler were unhappy farmers. They had reacted well to the blood and soil propaganda. They were unhappy due to the international agricultural crisis that was going on. So it showed that unhappy people might well vote Nazi. So conclusions you can draw from this in a bit more detail, of course, is that perhaps Hitler and the Nazis were actually in quite a strong position for if something like the Great Depression should come along. Their party organisation, their propaganda was all in a very good position to try and seize power. So if you found this video useful, do watch it a few more times, gather your knowledge together, go to some of my tutoring videos and test your knowledge. And if you found these very useful, then go to my playlist and have a look through. There'll be lots of other videos there to help you, and of course, take a look at my revision guides. Right, bye bye for now.